was a safe hiding place. It's a hiding place that was being built within the ghetto. My mom paid a lot of money to put my grandmother in there. Turns out it wasn't safe, but he didn't know that until after the war. So thinking that my grandmother was safe, my mom smuggled herself and me out of the ghetto. What happened in the ghetto after we left? Some months later, enough information, including eyewitnesses, managed to smuggle themselves back into the ghetto to warn everybody that all the people that are going on the trains out of the ghetto were going to concentration camps, and most of them were dying in the gas chambers. So nobody could any longer deny that they knew what was going to happen. So a group of young people, several hundred of them, late teens, 20s, 30s, they knew they would all die, but they decided to die fighting than die in the gas chambers. So the stage became known as the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Now imagine a group of young civilians, 300, 400, 500, no military training. They had some rifles and some pistols hidden in the ghetto. And they rose up against a trained Nazi army of thousands of troops with tanks and artillery and airplanes. The ghetto fighters knew they had no chance. They knew they would all die. It was a hopeless, hopeless act of defiance. They fought and they died, all of them. This is a scene from the ghetto at the end of the uprising. It only lasted about 2 or 3 weeks. And every man, woman, and child that remained in the ghetto was dead. Every one of them. And apparently, Hitler was so angry or so insulted that the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto dared to rise up against him that he ordered his army to destroy, to level every building within the ghetto. And this is what the ghetto looked like. This is a panoramic shot, a 180-degree shot of the ghetto after the uprising. As I said, uprising lasted only about 2 or 3 weeks. The black line that you see there, those are the buildings of Warsaw, right outside the ghetto's walls. And everything within the ghetto was smashed. How did my mom and I survive outside the ghetto? Here's a photo of my mom when she's 7 years old with her brother. It was the only photo that she managed to keep on herself throughout the whole war, and that she saved because she had always on herself. My mom was a very smart woman. She was a young attorney before the war, college educated. At the university, she learned English and she learned French. So the first thing she did when she got herself and me out of the ghetto is she dyed her black hair blonde so she wouldn't look quite so Jewish. Most Poles have hair that's either light brown or dark blonde. So she dyed her hair blonde. And then she bought the identification papers of a young Polish Catholic woman who had died. That woman's name was Szymowska. And she told me the next time she saw me, because I didn't live with her once we were out of the ghetto, she told me, from now on, your name is no longer Elbaum, forget Elbaum. Your name is Szymowski. And every time my mom would buy a new set of ID papers to keep the Nazis off her trail, she would tell me what my new name was, and I had to remember that. I was starting with it at the age of 4. And I had about, I had about 4 or 5 different Polish last names I had to remember every time. So, with blonde hair, with fake ID papers, my mom went to work. First, she got some good jobs. She became an English governess or French governess to wealthy Poles who wanted the kids to learn the languages. When those jobs ended, my mom took whatever was available, and they included becoming a cook. She wasn't a good cook, by the way. But I found that out only after the war. She became a cook, maid, a scrub woman, a laundress, whatever. Whatever was available, as long as the job came with 2 benefits. 1, room and board, either in the apartment or the apartment block of the people who hired her. And the reason that was critical is that she wouldn't have to walk on the street to work, back and forth every day, because every time she was on the street, she could be picked up by Nazi patrol or Nazi police and sent to concentration camps, fake papers or not. Requirement number 2, a little bit of cash. Not for herself, but to pay to the people who were keeping me. Because my mom decided that I would be safer if I was raised by a Polish Catholic family together with their kids. My mom tells me that when I was 3 and 4 and 5 and even 6 years old, my hair was light brown. So I didn't look Jewish. It was only after the war, when I was 7, that it started turning black, and it turned, and eventually my hair was black. And then about 10, 15 years ago, it turned white. If your kids don't know how that happens, ask anyone else. So my mom survived by luck, strength, and wits. I survived by luck only. I'll give you an example of my luck. It was probably the first, or maybe one of the first families with whom I lived. I remember I was sitting at a table eating soup. And it must have been evening, because I remember somebody was lighting a kerosene lamp on the table. There was no electricity in that part of Warsaw at that time. So I'm sitting there eating soup, till suddenly I hear this loud banging on the front door and loud shouts in German. And everybody rushed to the front door, but I didn't. I just continued to sit there eating soup. Why? Probably because I was hungry. I was hungry for most of the war years, but that was not unusual. Everyone, most everyone, at least some of the time, was hungry in Poland because there was not enough food during the war. So I'm sitting there eating soup, so all of a sudden I sensed that somebody was staring at me. And I remember I turned to the side, and there was this tall Nazi soldier standing there staring straight down at me. I remember he had on a heavy dark green winter coat, so it must have been wintertime. The Nazi uniform. And on his shoulder he had this large weapon, like a rifle, but much bigger barrel with holes around it. I now know that it was a machine gun, but that was the first time I'd ever seen one. And apparently, even at the age of 4, machinery fascinated me, which is why I probably eventually became an engineer. So I looked at his gun and I just kept staring at it and staring at it. And then I looked at him and I smiled at him. I still remember that. I smiled at him. I don't know why. And then I continued to eat soup. He stood there another moment, he was probably trying to decide what to do about me. Then he walked off, and soon he and the other soldiers were gone, and all was quiet. I learned after the war that had I shown any fear whatsoever, he would have made me drop my pants to see whether I was circumcised, because only Jews were circumcised in Poland at that time. And if that had happened, I would have never reached my 5th birthday. So again, pure luck. Pure luck. I lived with about 4 or 5 different Polish Catholic families during the war. And my mom would move me from one family to the next. Whatever the family with whom I was already living, I learned it would be danger. Danger to me and danger to them. And the reason was that of all the countries Nazis conquered, only in Poland, they made a decree that any Polish family caught hiding Jews would be immediately sent to concentration camps along with the Jews that they were hiding. So the families that kept me, they certainly didn't do it for the pittance that my mom could pay them. She paid them all the cash she was making, but it was nothing. It was the families that kept me, 4 or 5 families, that were risking perhaps their lives. So I'm going to throw out a question. It's a challenge question. I'm going to throw it out primarily to you guys. Imagine it's now 20 years in the future, and you're finished with your education, you're working for some company here in the Bay Area, and the company decides to send you to the Foreign Office, to head up the Foreign Office for a year. When you get there, you're going to have a car, you need a house, apartment. And when you get there, you find that the government of that country is prejudiced, and they are persecuting a small minority. They're arresting them, throwing them in jails, beating them, killing them. And you know that if you took one of them into your house or apartment, you would save them. Imagine you could take in a little 4-year-old kid, as I was, a little undernourished 4-year-old kid, you took him into your apartment. You could save him. But you might be taking a risk, maybe with your life. Would you do it? Would you do it? Think about it, please. Would you do it? But the 4 or 5 different Polish families that took me in, they took that risk. And that is the only reason I'm with you guys here today, because they took that risk. That's why I'm alive. The last family with whom I lived was headed by a man named Leon. And his is the only name I remember, and only his first name. Probably because I liked him. He was fair to me. He was kind most of the time, not always. But he was also tough. And when I disobeyed him, when I did something I wasn't supposed to do, including eating some food when I was alone in the apartment, he beat me, and he beat me hard. But I always knew why. I always knew what I did, how I disobeyed it, and if it involved eating food because I was hungry, sometimes it was worth it eating. So I liked Leon. I didn't like his wife or their little daughter, because whenever my mom would visit me, and that might be once a month, once every several months, the last time I did see her was 6 months, my mom would bring me a present. It might be a little wooden toy, or it might be a hard-boiled egg, which was a nice present in wartime Poland when everybody was hungry. And my mom always made sure that I ate that egg before she would leave. She wanted to make sure I got it. But after my mom would leave, Leon's wife would very often take away the little wooden toy and give it to the daughter to play. So I didn't like that. I was with Leon and his family from the beginning of 1944 through the end of that year that included August 44, time of the Warsaw Uprising. Now, the Warsaw Uprising differed in one very fundamental way from the Ghetto Uprising, which was about a year, 16 months earlier. The Ghetto fighters knew they would all die. It was truly a hopeless act of defiance. They knew they had no chance, and they all died. The Warsaw fighters thought they had a chance. First of all, there was like 20,000 of them, and they were loyal to and supported by the Polish government in exile in London. So they had some weapons. They had some mortars, some machine guns, ammunition that was parachuted down to them by the Royal Air Force from England. But the main reason that the Polish fighters thought they had a chance when they started the Warsaw Uprising in August 44 is that by then, the Russian army had pushed the Nazis out of Russia and out of eastern Poland. And the Russian army was sitting right at the edge of the river that cuts through Warsaw, right at the other side of the river. So the hope and expectation was that once the uprising started, the Russian army would cross the river, help the fighters liberate Warsaw sooner, liberate Poland sooner, end the war sooner. And as a matter of fact, Moscow radio encouraged the fighters to start the uprising. But that was a huge fake out, a big lie on the part of the Russians. They had no intention of helping the fighters, because the Russians decided long before that every country they liberate from the Nazis, they would turn it into a communist satellite. So the last thing they wanted in Poland would be to have an underground army, still that's loyal to the pro-Western government in London, still armed, resisting the communist takeover. So the Russians did absolutely nothing, but they sat across the river and watched and waited while the Nazis wiped out most of those 20,000 fighters and turned Warsaw into a total ruin. This is what Warsaw looked like. And about October, November, the uprising lasted about 3-4 months. There was a total ruin. Now, how did Leon and his family and I get out of there alive? I'll read to you part of a chapter called August 44, Warsaw Uprising. My first awareness of the impending catastrophe started one day while I was standing at the window, watching the summer from a distance. Suddenly there was loud shouting on the street, and people were running, and shots, many shots. Leon ran to the window, looked outside, and as bullets began to hit our building, he grabbed me and ran back into the room and away from the window. For some reason, most likely ignorance, I didn't feel frightened at that moment. And soon all was quiet. As Leon and his wife talked in very agitated voices, I remained unconcerned and totally oblivious of the danger. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but not in school. I couldn't help you in school. The next afternoon, we heard distant gunfire, and Leon's wife was packing suitcases and cardboard boxes. The next morning, we carried all these downstairs and loaded them on a pedal-powered rickshaw, like a cart with a bicycle wheel on each side and a bicycle rear end, which Leon apparently got somewhere. And with Leon pedaling and his wife and daughter and I sitting on the baggage, we left the city. The Warsaw Uprising had just started. I remember nothing about the ride through the city, but once we reached the countryside, there were fields of grain gleaming in the sun, farmhouses with thick thatched roofs, cows and goats in the pasture, and occasionally people working in the fields or walking along the road. It was quiet, except for Leon's pedaling and heavy breathing and the rickshaw creaking. Eventually, we stopped to rest along the side of the road, and I asked Leon where we were going. To my cousin's farm, he answered. I wandered away along the ditch that ran beside the road, and then I noticed a dark blue object, something like a large potato, lying in the grass. I picked it up. It felt cold and heavy, like metal. It had a shiny ring on one end of it. I started to play with it. I pulled on the ring, and it came out in my hand just as Leon called that we were leaving. I tossed the object over my shoulder. And because I was standing by the ditch, it fell into the ditch, and I ran to the rickshaw. As I scampered onto it, there was a very loud bang coming to where I had just been. We all gasped, and Leon started pedaling furiously, much faster than before. It was only later, much later, that I understood that the dark blue object was a German hand grenade. And while Leon didn't know what I had done, he did know that with the uprising now in Warsaw, any Poles found by the Nazis near weapons or explosives would have been shot on the spot. So double luck. Leon had called me a few seconds later. The grenade would have exploded into my hand. And if there had been any Nazi troops that were in the vicinity, they heard the explosion, they would have tried to find us, and if they did, they would have shot all of us. So double luck. I once heard that, given the choice of luck or brains, go for it. Actually, I like to think, if you had a choice, go for both. I was with Leon at that farm through the end of that year into January. I remember right after, I remember we were Christmas caroling in the village, and right after New Year's, suddenly my mom appeared. I had no idea how she found me. I had not seen her for 6 months, so I didn't know when I would see her, or if I allowed myself to think about it. I didn't know whether I would ever see her again. So those are very happy moments for me. About a week later, after she arrived, I was sleeping. It was at night, I was sleeping, and she woke me up. And she had tears in her eyes. And she said to me, "You are saved." And I didn't know what she was talking about. But she took my hand and pulled me out of bed and dragged me behind her. I knew we were going to the main room in the farmhouse. But as we passed the window that faced the front of the house, and it was a huge black shape in the darkness on the snow with headlights on it. And it looked like a tank. And when we came into the main room, there were soldiers there. But they didn't have the dark green uniforms of the Nazis. They had other uniforms. And when the Russian tank commander, my mom bent down to me and said, "They're Russian." And when the Russian tank commander saw me, he reached into his pocket, took out a little white cube, and he handed it to me like this. But I didn't know what it was. So my mom said to me, "That's sugar, take it, taste it." So I took it, put it in my mouth, and I swear it was the best taste I've ever had in my whole life to this day. Not only that, ever since that moment, I had this tremendous sweet tooth. I can start dinner with dessert, have dessert for the main course, and I can end it with dessert. And I love to do it, but my wife never lets me. I know she's right. I call that moment the sugar cube miracle. And about a week or so after the sugar cube miracle, we learned that the Russian army had pushed the Nazis out of Warsaw. So my mom and I returned to Warsaw, mostly by walking, hitching rides where possible on military trucks. And when we came to Warsaw, it looked like this, except there was a lot of snow. And as we walked through it, occasionally I would see half buried in the snow would be a body or two, still left over from the battle between the Nazis and the Russians. My mom very quickly found a place where she and I could sleep, over on the side of the river where the Russians had encamped, because that was still intact. And then she got a job. Because she had been an attorney before the war, she got a good job with a brand new book publishing organization that the Polish communist government started to print books and propaganda. And her job was to go around the country and open bookstores, because during the war, most of the bookstores were closed. Now, to be able to go to some of those farther out places, you need a transport. And because